Good day everyone, so hope you're all doing really well. Kokomi got buffed in Genshin 5.2 via the Imaginarium Theatre. So as you can see on screen, Kokomi has gotten a 20% increase in her HP, attack, defense, but more importantly with the Imaginarium Theatre, we got a new pose for Kokomi, and this is arguably the better of the two buffs because this one is permanent. And what I love about this is that we now have a new pose, we can take a couple of new photos. It's really awesome, but a lot of people were kind of initially a bit negative and they said, well, this is just her idle animation, Hoya was so lazy, and unfortunately you can't be more wrong, because if you actually look at Kokomi's idle animation, you'll notice that she always takes the book when she faces you to the right side of her body swivels right. But with the new trick that we got here, she faces the left side and she's looking up, not down towards the book, and the page in the book changes and the entire pose and everything changes. There's so much beautiful things you can do, and as a Kokomi main you owe it to yourself to go back to the Primordial Sea and just take a couple of gorgeous pictures. But in any case, let's talk a bit about the combat aspect. Now, some people might say that because Xiangling is this brilliant, awesome 4-star that everyone recommends, you can now use a buff Kokomi and play a bit of a Vaporize style. Well, unfortunately, even with 260 ER and a C6 or 5 Xiangling with Engulfing Lightning, you're gonna run out of energy because Xiangling is just not that good. So for a Kokomi team, it's not really what you want to play, and if you just had another Hydra unit or even Electro unit, you would be literally better off. Speaking of literally better off, here is Fischl. So I'm going to show you how to play a bit of the Electro Charge, because in this case Kokomi's Electro Charge teams and Hyper Bloom teams did get a buff because Hoya changed some of their reactions. And if you are someone that wants to play physical Kokomi, well, Superconduct also got a buff, so in that case, yeah, we can say that Kokomi legitimately got a buff. And if you look at the HP here, it's not too far off from the result that we got with Xiangling. It just shows you that in some cases even the amazing pyro application from someone like Xiangling is not always good enough. Well, actually, that's a bit of a lie. Xiangling herself is not good enough because you have to play her in very specific teams to get the most out of the character. She's not a generalist pyro applicator that works for a bunch of other teams. Well, okay, enough Xiangling hating, I can do that all day long. Let's get back to Kokomi and play a bit of a Nilou Bloom team in this Abyss. If you are someone that has gotten your Nilou to C2, I think you can legitimately play your Nilou Bloom team, and with the added bit of like an HP bonus that the Imaginarium Theatre has given you, you've got a bit more survivability on your Kokomi. Now, my personal recommendation is for you to always run at least an HP Sands, an EM Goblet, and a Healing Bonus Circlet, but in my case, because my Kokomi is a bit stronger than the average one, I'll just be running EM all the way through, because why not? That's pretty fun. And if you now go into the Spiral Abyss, you'll see that things are far more consistent when you play Kokomi's actual teams that work well with her, unlike Crapling. It just feels good. Like playing Nilou Blooms, and it's a team I haven't played in quite a bit because I've just been doing a lot of overworld stuff, just feels natural, it feels smooth, it feels so awesome. And even stuff like baiting the little dinosaur into your area here with Collei is just so gorgeous. Look at that. Before our burst even ran out, we've already cleared all of the things. Now, one of the things you might ask me is, well, with the buff to Kokomi's HP, what can we realistically do? And the answer is, well, in Nilou Bloom teams you can kind of see where the advantage comes from. You've got a bit of higher defense, more HP, so the ability to tank some of the enemy hits and also to survive some of the Bloom explosions. I don't think defense affects those, but HP certainly does in terms of how much you can absorb. Definitely gives you the advantage. And then something like a mono Hydro team, in that case you can use Kokomi's added HP to just do a bit more damage and have a bit of a stronger on-field presence. You'll heal more with Arena, you'll get a bit of a quicker fanfare, and the whole thing is very synergistic. So in that case, for Kokomi, if you're specifically looking to use her in the Abyss, those would be my two recommended teams. Although I must say, if you're running a season C0 Nilou, it's not going to be as effective as running a C2 Nilou that can shred the opponent's resistance, Hydro and Dendro resistance, which is really, really powerful, especially against enemies here that have a high Dendro resistance. And then finally, I think there are a couple of other teams you can play with Kokomi. Something like Sukokumon can still work, but it is very gimmicky, and perhaps it's in the first half you've got very mobile enemies, so it might not really work out that well. So perhaps substituting Sucrose out for Chaska, like we did in the one video, could be what you can do. You can run a freeze team, but I mean you're not benefiting from the buff that Kokomi got. In general, the best buff you could probably give to Kokomi would be healing bonus, which is primarily what she scales off of. About half of her damage comes from her healing bonus stat, and even then you're only really going to get benefits in teams that require that extra bit of healing, and there are some Kokomi teams that are just not going to benefit as much unless you use it, for instance, like in a Taser team as one of the drivers. And certainly with the buff to the electrocharge reaction, that could be a legitimate way for you to use Kokomi. So in Hyper Bloom and electrocharge, that's absolutely the spot to be using Kokomi, because you've just got a bit of a bump up in terms of your damage. Certainly something that can be very helpful on both the first and the second halves because of the versatility of the Hyper Bloom team. And then I think, yeah, that is pretty much it in terms of the Kokomi buffs, unless there's some wacky teams that I've missed for some reason. Kokomi is currently in a very interesting position because she's this hybrid healer, battler, can do all sorts of things. She really is lacking a very strong distinctive niche, although I must say I think the Nilou Bloom team still help her very much, but it's not like there is something iconic about what she can do. And like I responded to one of my commenters in one of the comment section, giving Kokomi some sort of ability to penetrate enemies' defenses with true damage based off of the scaling, or of like negative crit rate scaling, which you could give to a future 5-star or 4-star character, might be a very nice niche direction you can take Kokomi, because in that case you would have very strong opponents, i.e. you would have opponents with high defense and res, and you can only really effectively damage them by dealing true damage. And in a case like that, even if someone has a C6 R5 Mualani or some massive nuke setup, they would not be able to beat those opponents faster than a C0 Kokomi with this true damage. I think that's a nice way of thinking of it. I've actually written something similar to Hoyo, saying they should make the Electro Dragon like that, where she allows characters to scale off of negative crit rate, reduces party crit rate, and then you just build up a new niche, because there are certain characters in the game that are like supports. Let's say someone like Diona, that you can, because there's no sense in building crit rate on them, you can always just reduce their crit rate and then get some buffs for the team. It could open up a couple of interesting dynamics for some of the weaker characters to have at least an advantage in an abyss, whereas your stronger characters would not then see any benefit. A kind of a bit of a different way of thinking, but that's just me. Alright, and then finally, hopefully you can see the tutorial here in the background. This is how we got to the little special, what do you call it, Primordial Sea. It's very, very simple. You just need to get to a point where you can drop down, as you can see with Kokomi. So you just swim through, and then once you're at the top here and you're above it, so you've got to be like slightly just above it, not in the center of it but in front of it. Then you start swimming down as fast as possible, and the moment you do that, you should fall through without the game loading in the collision, and then you'll get to that portal. So you can see here, boom, we're perfectly in the middle. Alright guys, that's it for this video. Thanks for watching.